What's up guys, and welcome to the channel. In this episode, I've got a brand new aftermarket fender. We're going to be putting it on this STL Miata, and I'm going to show you the process we go through to get the fender ready to put on, and also getting it put on the car and getting all the gaps lined up. So stay tuned. Alright, so the first thing you need to do when replacing a fender, and this is kind of obvious, is take the old fender off. So it's 10mm bolts, and when I say 10mm, I mean the head is actually a 10mm socket takes it off. There's 2 bolts here, there's 1 bolt here, 1 bolt here, 1 bolt here, 1 there, 1 up in this corner, and this is a nut that you don't have to take totally loose. The fender is slotted, as you can see, so it'll slip right in. You just have to loosen it. And then there are 2 bolts down here on the bottom. The next step would be to make sure, since the fender is damaged, obviously since you're taking it off, just make sure that there's nothing bent that's going to affect the way this fender fits. This apron could be bent in or something like that. In this case, it's not. In this case, this little piece right here, this is the most common thing to get bent because it's pretty flimsy. And if the fender takes an impact, it'll bend this part here. And we've already test fit the fender once and pulled that out where it needs to be. You can take a dolly and a hammer, and a lot of times you just grab it with your hand and put it where it needs to be. So everything is where it needs to be on this car. So the next step is to start prepping this new fender to go on the car. And the 2 things we do to these fenders before we put them on the car for the final fitment is we roll this lip here. Now the reason why we roll this lip is these cars run oversized tires, and if there's a chance that the tire could get on this edge and it'll cut the tire. So we roll that lip in to minimize the chance of that. The only problem with that is if this car is a street car and it runs splash shields, the splash shield actually attaches to this tab and to this tab, and we bend those over, so the splash shield would not be able to attach to the fender if you roll it the way we do. Now, the race cars don't run splash shields, so we don't have to worry about that. Okay, the next thing we do to this fender before we put it on the car is there is 1 hole down here at the bottom, and it's actually this hole right here. And it's the exact same size as the bolt that goes in the car that holds it on. And these are aftermarket fenders. And what I mean by aftermarket is that they are not made by Mazda. Mazda does not make this fender, an aftermarket company does. So that being said, that means that it doesn't fit exactly perfect to the car. It doesn't fit bad, but it doesn't fit exactly perfect. And with that hole being exactly the same size as the bolt that holds it in, it doesn't give you any wiggle room to manipulate gaps or to basically get the fender to fit right. So what we do is we take a unibit, a small unibit like this, and just ever so slightly open up that hole just to give it a little bit of wiggle room. Now, in doing that, it gives you a lot of adjustment throughout the whole fender. So all the other holes are exactly that size that we open it up to, and they have a little bit of wiggle room already in them. Just for some reason, that bolt right there in the bottom is the exact size of the bolt. So we manipulate that just so we can get the fender to put on right. And let's go ahead and do that now. We'll get this thing drilled, and I'll get this thing rolled. Alright, so we've got this hole drilled, and we've also got the lip rolled. Let me show you how I drilled the hole, how I determine how big the hole needs to be. So I use a unibit here, and it's got little ledges, and I determine how many ledges are showing by going up here to the top hole here. And as you can see, there are 3 ledges showing, so I want to make sure that I drill this hole no larger than 3 ledges. And I've actually got 5 ledges showing, so I could go up, I could drill this hole out a little more, actually 2 more ledges to get it the exact same size as the top holes. And I wouldn't go any larger than that. Honestly, what I've got there will probably work, but if you want to open it up as much as possible, you can make it the same size as those. Now also we have this lip rolled, and I like to do that by putting a stand up and a piece of wood, and the wood acts as a dolly. And I'll take this hammer, it's got a small flat edge, and I'll roll this lip a little bit at a time. Just keep hitting it until the lip gets rolled over. and I stop at this tab, and I stop at this tab. Now, it doesn't have to be totally flat, and when you're hammering on it, you want to make sure that you don't hit the outside skin of the fender because that'll knock a dent in it. But just kind of roll this lip over, and what you're trying to achieve is just get rid of this sharp edge where the tire's going to ride, so that the tire doesn't, if the tire does hit the fender, it won't cut the tire. So just roll it over just a little bit, or as far as you want, but just know that if you start making this metal touch the outside fender, there's a good chance that you're going to knock dents in the outside of it. And for those of you who want to know the exact measurements, the fourth ledge here is 13/32. I wouldn't drill it any larger than that there. Also, if you don't have a unibit, that's fine. You can take a regular drill bit and just determine what size the regular drill bit needs to be. Just make sure that it's not any larger than the hole that's up here. And you can use just a regular drill bit. It needs to be a drill bit that can drill metal, and just open that hole up with a regular drill bit. That'll work fine also. Alright, so this fender is ready to be put on this car. Now, you might be working on a car where the door is painted with no scratches and you don't want to skin it. The windshield pillar, you want to protect it also, and also on the rocker, because those are the closest panels that you're going to be getting to with the new fender. You can take blue tape, and I like the blue tape because it doesn't stick really aggressively. It comes off easier when you want to take it off. So take some blue tape, run you a piece here or maybe two, and down the edge of the door and on the edge of the rocker. That way, if you do accidentally bump these panels with this fender, you won't scratch the adjacent panels. Alright, so we've got the fender set up there. We've got our blue tape on all the edges so that we don't damage the adjacent panels by scratching them with the new panel. All the bolts are finger tight, and they're all in there. You don't ever want to tighten any bolt until you have all the bolts started by hand. Now, there is a bolt back in here, and you have to open the door to get to that. But whenever you're opening a door next to a fender that's not necessarily where it needs to be, you want to be careful. So grab your door handle, open it real slowly, keep an eye on your gap, and make sure that the door is not going to hit the fender. Make sure you have clearance there. So we have good clearance, no problems. You can start that bolt, get the door closed back. Now we have all the bolts, like I said, started by hand, so we're ready to start tightening the bolts. Now, where I like to start tightening is at the rear. Now, the reason why I'm starting at the rear is because the door fits the car. All the gaps are good on the door. Everything at the back is everything good. So I want to make the fender fit this door. So I'm going to manipulate the fender where I need to because it has a little bit of motion in it. Start tightening the bolts at the back and then work my way forward. Now, when I say work my way forward, all these bolts will be tight in the back. All the gaps will be good in the back. And even this bolt here. So I'll have lost motion, or I can adjust this fender here. So I want to close the hood down, check my gap, see where this fender needs to be, kind of hold it where it needs to be in place, raise the hood back up, and then tighten this bolt. Now, if the gap is good here and good here, 99% of the time it's good in the middle. But just say that the fender has a bow in it or the hood has a bow in it and you're trying to make that gap even all the way down. With this bolt tight and this bolt tight, you can still push on the fender a little bit and close up this gap and tighten these two bolts, which would help give you an even gap all the way down. Now, if you're still having problems with the fender lining up with the hood, you can adjust on the hood. But if you start moving the hood, just know that if you make the gaps good over here, any adjustment you make on this side is going to affect the gaps on that side. So you might end up chasing your tail back and forth, just trying to get everything lined out perfect. But that's the way I like to do the fender. Once I get all my gaps right, I tighten every bolt on the fender, and at that point, it's good to go. Alright, so we've got the fender all bolted up. Everything's tight. All the gaps are perfect. You see here the gap down to the hood is all even. The gap to the fender to the door is even. Now, here's something I did not explain earlier. Let me see if I can explain it now. The flushness of the gap. Now, the gap width is one thing, but the gap, how smooth it is adjacent to each other, how equal they are in height, is adjusted by the bolt that's in the back there. And you're going to need a long extension. It helps if the wheel's off and there's no splash shield in the car. So you're going to get your extension, get that thing on the bolt there, push the fender in and out to where it is a smooth finish here, a smooth transition between this panel and this panel. Push it to the height that you want and then tighten that bolt. Now, when you're doing the fender to the hood, there is no adjustment on the fender up and down. Let me show you where the adjustment is on that. So, get this hood open. So these little bump stops here, they're rubber, and you can turn them in and out, and they raise or lower this bump stop. And this bump stop is what the hood actually sits on. So if you're having a problem with the hood being too low against the fender, you can raise this up, and it'll actually push the hood up and make the gap even, a smooth transition between the fender and the hood. So I've got this set where it needs to be. The same one on that side. You get this closed down. Get her latched in. And as you can see, it's a little bit high. So let's run that bump stop down a little bit more. Maybe that much. There we go. Much smoother. That's how you get the height adjustment on the gap to the fender. Now, everything on the fender is tight. I'm happy with the way it fits. So now we can start moving on to the bumper, put the headlight in, and I have to adjust on that splitter a little bit. So we're gonna get this front end finished putting back together now. Alright, so we've got the bumper and the headlight bolted in this thing. Now this being an STL car with the splitter and the way this bumper bolts up is nothing like a spec Miata or maybe even a street car Miata. Honestly, it's probably not even like any other STL car. So I didn't want to go into detail about how this bumper bolted up and how you need to do everything to adjust this, because it's not the same. It's probably only true for this car. So I'll make another video with a spec Miata, because the bumper on a spec Miata typically bolts up very similar to the way a street car would if you're working on your own Miata. Now, I'm pretty happy with the way everything turned out on this car. I need to zip tie these ducts up for the brake coolers and get the wheels back on this thing, and then I can get it back on the ground and we can call the wrap guys. They can come pick it up and get it wrapped. Alright, so we got this thing off the jack stands. I called the guys over at Car Wrap Specialists. They're sending a wrecker over here to pick this thing up, and they're going to get this thing wrapped. Now, this car is a little bit different than the spec Miatas that I typically do. And like I said, it's an STL car, so they have different rules than the spec class. Obviously, they're allowed aero because of this wing and the front splitter. And I believe they can also do some engine stuff and some suspension stuff, which should make this car make more horsepower and handle better and all those other good things that race cars are supposed to do. But I'm sure I'm going to get some questions in the comment section about the splitter and the rear wing. Now, the front splitter, from what I can tell, is a one-off piece, kind of a custom built for this car. The rear wing, on the other hand, is made by a company called, and I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this correctly, but it's Malin Alley Wings. And they do have a website, because my brother checked them out, because he wants to put one of these wings on his daily driver, which I think would be pretty cool. It is a real carbon fiber wing, which makes it really light, and it looks like it would do really well in the downforce department. So I don't think it's over the top, so it would probably look pretty cool on a street car. So we'll see if my brother orders one and we'll get it put on his car. Maybe I'll make a video about it.
The first rule of family gatherings is always drive your own car so you can leave when you want to.
Alright, so that's going to be about it for this video. Something a little bit different for you guys. A little bit smaller section of the repair with a little bit more detail about a specific task. And in this case, it was hanging the new fender and getting everything to line up. Let me know what you guys think about it in the comment section down below. Subscribe to the channel, like and share this video. And as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. See ya!